Assassin's Creed, the one that started it all the way back in 2007, it introduced us to the things we still experience today, such as parkour across the rooftops, the iconic hidden blade, and the eternal conflict between assassins and Templars. But almost 2 decades later, with over a dozen sequels and spin-offs that have drastically changed the formula, is the original Assassin's Creed still worth playing in 2025? Today, we are going to dive back into Altair's journey, look at how it holds up compared to modern standards, and decide whether or not this piece of gaming history is still worth your time. So essentially, this will be kind of a little review of the game, and a is it worth it video put into one. Please do remember that this is just my opinion, and I welcome you to share yours down in the comments. Finally, before I begin, please consider subscribing to the channel for more Assassin's Creed content. I'm aiming to reach 1000 subscribers by the end of the year, and your support would mean a lot, thank you. Assassin's Creed was released in November of 2007 and was developed by Ubisoft Montreal, who have been responsible for not only developing a lot of the Assassin's Creed series, but have also worked on IPs such as Splinter Cell, Far Cry, and Prince of Persia, just to name a few. However, Prince of Persia is actually interesting, as the original Assassin's Creed idea was built off a planned Prince of Persia Sands of Time sequel, called Prince of Persia Assassins. When Assassin's Creed released, it was received with generally positive reviews and was praised for its storytelling, visuals, art design and originality, which is something the series definitely lacks in today. The criticism that it faced was that the game suffered from its repetitive nature, which I will expand more upon later. This first entry to the series of course did well enough to have 2 spin-offs. First there was Assassin's Creed Altair's Chronicles for the Nintendo DS, then later mobile devices, and then in 2009 Assassin's Creed Bloodlines was released for the PlayStation Portable. Furthermore, due to the success this game had, it obviously, as we all know, ended up receiving a sequel, which happened to introduce perhaps one of the best characters of all time, but I'll get to that in the Assassin's Creed 2 video. The final thing I will say in this section of the video is that AC1 is available on Xbox 360, but can be played on Xbox One or Series X and S consoles through backwards compatibility. It is also available on PlayStation 3 and PC. Just for reference, I played on the Xbox One rather than PC, which is where I normally play, and the reason why is because of achievements. If you do want to get all of the achievements, like that is something you enjoy to do, then unfortunately they are only currently available on the Xbox version of the game. The main story for this game is split into 2 focuses. There is the modern day where you play as a guy named Desmond, but most of the game takes place in the year 1191, and you play as the master assassin named Altair, who I'll focus on first. This game starts in a different way to a lot of the other entries in the series, in the way that you start as a master assassin. Whereas in the other ones, you start off as, well, I don't really know how to explain it. You just start off as someone who isn't already a master assassin. The only other ones that I can think of where you are already an assassin is Rogue, Syndicate and Liberation. Under some certain circumstances, Altair is reduced back down to a novice and will need to re-earn his rank by investigating the whereabouts and assassinating 9 targets that are given to him by his mentor, Al-Muwalim. That right there is the gameplay loop and why the game is considered repetitive. You go to one of the 3 major cities, Damascus, Jerusalem or Accra, and then once there, you will need to do some investigation missions. Firstly, there is pickpocketing letters or maps from people who are carrying important information on them. There is then eavesdropping, where you just sit on a bench and listen to a conversation to find out some more info. The more action-packed ones are interrogation, where you listen to a city caller spouting some nonsense, and then you will need to follow them to a secluded location to beat them up and get them to tell you more about the target. Finally, there is the informer missions. In these, you will need to talk to a lower ranked assassin who are working on finding out information and then give that information to higher ranked assassins. Altair can obtain this by performing favours such as assassinating Templar guards or doing a flag race or something similar to that. Interestingly, these investigations were added very late in development, as the game was originally way more linear, but if I remember correctly, the son of the CEO played the game and said that it was boring, so they added in the investigations to add a bit more spice. At first, these are not too bad, but by the end of the game, this cycle of doing investigations and then doing an assassination can become tedious and kind of boring in a way. I personally think the strongest points of this game is the prologue and the first 3 assassinations. Then assassinations 4 to 8 are tedious, but the 9th assassination and the ending is where the interest picks back up again. The assassination missions themselves are interesting, it's just the part leading up to it that I find tedious and boring. The characters you encounter are not too bad either, with most of the voice acting being performed quite well. From the top of my head, the best ones are Al-Muwalim, Malik and Desmond. Altair for some reason is voiced with an American accent, and to be honest, I'm not exactly sure why it was decided. However, the in-game lore reason is something to do with the animus adjusting it for the user to understand more easily, or something along the lines of that. Altair's character development is another thing that was done pretty well. He starts out arrogant and egotistical, but by the end he learns a lot and becomes basically a different person by becoming more aware of his decisions and actions, as well as maturing a lot more. His development is further expanded in Revelations and the Secret Crusade novel, which is great for people who are planning on experiencing them too to get the most out of his character. On the other hand, there is the targets in the game. I know I'm basically repeating myself, but again, the way they were dealt with by the writers was done well. What they say to Altair at the end of their lives is very compelling and in a way cryptic, but what you get from it, or at least I did, is that maybe they are correct in their overall goal and they make the assassins seem kind of hypocritical in some ways. These aspects of the game, meaning the characters and the core story, is what I liked the most about it, and some of it does get expanded on in future games, and for that reason alone I would say it is worth pushing past the boring repetitive nature of the game, especially if you plan on playing Revelations. I would definitely say play this game beforehand so you can appreciate Altair's involvement and story in that game more. So with the bulk of Altair's story covered, I'll quickly talk about the modern day aspect. The modern day doesn't take up much of the game, but it's still just as equally important as it introduces you to the story of Desmond, starting just after him being kidnapped by the company named Abstergo. I think the modern day is pretty good as it gives you enough information but not too much, which makes you question things and want to know more about Desmond's story. Don't get me wrong, the modern day is not anything revolutionary, but it is a decent start to the following modern day story to come, from this game up until Assassin's Creed 3. For me personally, the gameplay for Assassin's Creed is where it has shown its age. Firstly, the parkour in this game can sometimes be very smooth and responsive. However, other times it's the complete opposite, which can be very frustrating. Throughout my time revisiting this game, I had times where I would be aiming to do a leap of faith and Altair would just ignore it and just jump to an early grave instead. Another thing I noticed was that when climbing some buildings, Altair would get stuck and not climb in any direction, even though there were things for him to grab onto. The point where the unresponsiveness really started to get me frustrated was during one of the main assassinations that was near water. You had to make your way onto a ship to assassinate the target. However, the issue is due to an animus glitch which causes Altair to not being able to swim, and so if you fall into the water you die instantly. Now match this up with the unresponsive controls and then you can probably see how this is an issue. Moving on to the combat, and there isn't much to say about it in all honesty. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it does the job. As you progress the game, you earn new abilities such as countering and dodging, as well as new items such as the short blade and throwing knives. For me personally, it got to the point where combat was more of a chore, again especially near the end of the game, because enemies become more present, meaning that the combat doesn't get necessarily more difficult, but it does draw out the combat more in terms of how long it takes to complete them. The game does suffer from all these little annoying things that really do test your patience and push you to think more carefully about how you approach things. For example, when travelling around the cities there are beggar women who swarm you and get in your way, which can cause you to trip over. The most annoying one though, without a doubt, has to be the drunk men. What these do is when you get close to them, they will swing their arms at you and push you around. I cannot tell you how much these guys made me want to throw my controller at the wall. Honestly, it is so annoying. What makes it even worse is that these guys are put near the docks where there is water, so if you get near them then they might just push you in. I do get why they are in the game. It makes you think about how you approach your targets, because they can ruin everything if you are not careful. But when I was near the end of the game and wanted to just get done, I was literally losing my patience with them. The world of Assassin's Creed 1 is pretty much what you would expect from a game that came out in 2007. A lot of games that came out around this time seem to have a yellow or grey filter over them, and this game follows that trend. The cities are pretty much the same, they just have different colour palettes and some of the architecture is different, but they are all split up into 3 districts and have the same activities. Also, in addition to the cities, there is the Masyaf village and castle. This area is more so just a place where you come to return to your mentor after completing assassinations, but it does have some story relevance outside of that near the start and end of the game. And finally, the last explorable area is the kingdom. Not much happens here except for travelling through it to get to other cities and doing some of the side content within it. Outside of the main story content, there is some side stuff to do, albeit there isn't very much to do and it isn't very engaging. Thankfully, you definitely won't have to do most of it if you just want to complete the main story of the game. The most entertaining one to do is the citizen rescue activities, and that says a lot about how simple these are, because for these all you need to do is fight some enemies and then talk to the NPC. In return, you get some vigilantes that will help you when you're trying to escape from enemies, which can be very helpful in some situations. Other than that though, the rest are very mundane and expected, such as the synchronization points, which require you to climb to a high point and sync with it to defog the map. I am sure most of you are familiar with this though. The last things in the game to do are the 420 flags to collect, 100 in each city, 100 in the kingdom and 20 in Masyaf. For collecting all of these you get nothing in return, except for some achievements if you are playing on Xbox. But if you are on the other platforms then collecting all of them is completely pointless, and I'm pretty sure one of the developers for the game also said it was a waste of time and they just wanted to see if people would actually collect them or not. The final type of collectible is the 60 Templars that can be found in each of the maps, except for Masyaf. These again are just pointless. You go to where they are on the map and just kill the Templar and your reward is an achievement on Xbox. So with all of that said, is playing the original Assassin's Creed worth it in 2025? I will say yes, just for the core narrative and the characters, especially for Altair's story and development. I think that alone is enough to see past the game's many flaws, because when you get to Revelations and experience more of Altair's life, it really is rewarding and in a way satisfying to witness. However, if you skip this game then you may not understand it as much and it won't be as impactful. As for the other things in the game such as the collectibles, I would personally say that avoiding it doesn't really add anything to the experience. Unless you are on Xbox and want to get all of the achievements, then that is understandable. Let me know in the comments your thoughts. Thank you for watching and have a great day, and I hope to see you in the next video.